You've heard it a million times, right? No taxation without representation. I mean, the phrase basically is the American Revolution. It's the headline.
And this quote, usually pinned on a lawyer named James Otis, just nails it. Taxation without representation is tyranny. It's so powerful because it's so simple, right? It's direct, it's punchy, and it became this incredible rallying cry.
But here's the real question. How does a catchy slogan, this powerful idea, actually explode into a full-blown war? I mean, we're talking about taking on the biggest empire on the planet. So let's dig in and see how we get from a principle to the battlefield.
All right, Section 1, the price of victory. Now, you might think our story kicks off with angry colonists in Boston, but it actually starts somewhere else entirely, with the end of a massive global war. Britain had just won the 7 Years' War, but let me tell you, that victory was anything but cheap.
So, on the one hand, Britain just scored this huge chunk of new territory in North America. But look at the cost. Their national debt almost doubled to £133 million. I mean, that is a staggering amount of money back then. It turns out winning an empire can practically bankrupt you.
And now they have this massive new piece of land to control. So to manage it, to protect the super profitable fur trade, and just to keep things in order, Britain does something they've never done before. They decide to station a permanent army of 10,000 soldiers right there in North America. Now, if you were sitting in Parliament in London, this all made perfect sense. You'd think, hey, these colonies are getting all the benefits of our army's protection, but they're paying way, way less in taxes than folks back home, so asking them to chip in for their own defense? It seemed like a no-brainer, totally fair. Okay, Section 2, a slogan is born. So what seemed like a really reasonable policy from London's perspective was on a collision course with a core belief the colonists held. And the thing that lit the fuse was the Stamp Act of 1765.
And this is where the idea really catches fire. James Otis steps up and basically says, hold on a second. This isn't about how much the tax is. This is about a fundamental right. He argued that taxing people without their consent, without them having a say through their own representatives, wasn't just a bad idea. It was a direct attack on liberty itself.
And this is so important to understand. What were they really asking for? Well, they weren't saying, hey, give us a few seats in Parliament over in London. Nope. They were saying that the only people who had the right to hit them with direct taxes were their own local colonial governments. You know, the only places where they actually elected people to represent them.
To really get their argument, you gotta understand this key difference. See, for years, the colonists were okay with what they called external taxes. Things like duties on goods coming into the colonies. They saw that as just regulating trade for the whole empire. Fine. But the Stamp Act, that was an internal tax. Its only purpose was to take money directly out of their pockets. To them, that wasn't regulating trade, that was a straight-up unconstitutional power grab.
All right, Section 3, the resistance organizes. So the battle lines are drawn, not on a field, but in principle. The big question now is, what do you do? How do you actually fight back when you think your own government is stepping over the line?
Well, the resistance popped up on two different levels, almost immediately. You had the official high road approach from the Stamp Act Congress, delegates in suits, writing formal complaints. And then you had the boots-on-the-ground approach from groups like the Sons of Liberty. They took the fight right to the streets with protests, boycotts, and they weren't afraid to get in the faces of the tax collectors.
And they used all kinds of tactics. But their most powerful weapon, by far, was money. Or rather, not spending money. By organizing massive boycotts of British goods, they hit the merchants back in England right where it hurts, their wallets. And suddenly, you've got this group of powerful English businessmen screaming at Parliament to repeal the tax so they can get back to business.
And what's really incredible is how fast they got organized. They created these things called the Committees of Correspondence. It started in Massachusetts and just spread like wildfire. Think of it like the nervous system of the Revolution, an information superhighway for its time that connected all the colonies and let them act like a single coordinated unit for the very first time.
Section 4, the point of no return. Okay, so this organized resistance from the colonies and Britain's reaction to it, well, it created this dangerous spiral. Each action led to a bigger reaction, and it pushed both sides right past any chance of a peaceful compromise.
And this little sequence right here tells the whole story. First, Parliament passes the Tea Act. The colonists see it as just another sneaky tax, so they throw the Boston Tea Party.
But instead of Britain thinking, okay, maybe we push too hard, they do the exact opposite. They decide to bring the hammer down on Massachusetts with a bunch of really harsh new laws.
And these weren't just fines or something. These laws, which the colonists called the Intolerable Acts, were a massive escalation. We're not talking about taxes anymore. They literally shut down Boston's port, they messed with their local government, they messed with their court system, and they even forced people to let soldiers live in their buildings. For a lot of colonists, this was the final straw. This was proof that Britain was done talking and was ready to rule by force.
So, Parliament's big plan to punish Massachusetts and make an example out of them, it completely backfired, big time. Instead of scaring the other colonies into line, it did the opposite. It united them. They all thought, if they can do that to Boston, they can do it to us. And that feeling of an attack on one is an attack on all is what led directly to them forming the First Continental Congress.
Section 5. A leader answers the call. Now, these huge political shifts don't just happen in a vacuum. They change people. And to see just how much, we can look at the personal journey of one guy, a Virginia planter you've probably heard of.
See, for someone like George Washington, at first, this whole thing was mostly about business. These British acts were hurting his bottom line as a planter. But when the Intolerable Acts came down, that was the game changer for him. It wasn't just about his wallet anymore. He started to see this as a fight for the fundamental liberties of every single colonist.
And you can see his transformation in this one quote. He says he's willing to raise 1,000 men, pay for them himself, and lead them personally to help out Boston. Think about that. This isn't just talk. He's putting his money, his reputation, and his life on the line for a cause.
And he made his position crystal clear without saying a word. When he showed up for the Second Continental Congress, he wasn't dressed like a politician. He walked in wearing his full military uniform. That was a signal to everyone in the room. The time for writing polite letters was over. It was time to get ready for a fight. So, there you have it. A powerful slogan that started as a pretty specific argument about taxes spiraled into a revolution and became a core idea for a brand new country. And it leaves us with a question that's just as relevant today as it was 250 years ago. In our own complex world, what does no taxation without representation really mean to you?